What's up, castaways? This is Miles Away. Welcome back to another video. Now today, we're going to talk about what I think is currently the most underrated polysynth on the market, the GS Music E7. The E7 is a 7-voice multi-timbral VCO analog polysynth with a fantastic filter, 2 oscillators and 2 sub-oscillators per voice, and MPE support. Not only that, the E7 is very competitively priced, coming in at $1,500. I'm really excited today to dive in and show you guys what I love about the synth, show you guys some music I made with it and more. But first, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. If you don't do it for the synth videos, do it for Ruffles the cat. He would really appreciate it. All right, let's get started. Alright, now every single sound in that demo, except for the drums, was created using only the E7. And I hope that really goes to show the kinds of sounds that it excels at. If you like warm pads, really lush analog keys, this is going to be your best friend. The E7 is quite versatile, but I really do feel like because of its filters and wild oscillators, it really excels at those more vintage lush sounds. So now I want to highlight some of my favorite things about the E7. Starting off, the oscillators. I really do feel like the oscillators on the E7 deserve a special mention because as far as VCOs go, these sound better than almost anything I've heard, especially at the price range. We've got all the classic waveforms, and you can even blend multiple waveforms at once while controlling the pulse width to create some really interesting waveforms. I especially appreciate how wild they are, where we don't have something like a vintage knob on a Prophet 6, but you almost don't need it on a synth like this because the VCOs on their own have that wonderful instability that I find really adds a lot of emotion to my music. Next up, I want to talk about the filter. Now, at first, I wasn't crazy about this filter because it's not what I'm used to on a polysynth. This is actually my only polysynth with a dedicated ladder filter, and it requires a bit of tweaking to get used to, but once you do, this filter absolutely sings. The notable characteristic about this filter is, like other ladder filters, the bass goes away as you turn up resonance, and very quickly the resonance starts to self-oscillate. So you've got to be careful when making traditional keyboard and pad sounds not to turn the resonance up too high, but also not to have it completely off. There's an interesting sweet spot that I find works really well for most of the sounds I like to make, and as soon as I got used to that, this filter became absolutely amazing for me. Next up, to show you guys the workflow, I'm going to walk you through a quick patch that I made, and you can see how fast this synth really is. I think that if you're a fan of synths that are knob per function, like the Prophet 6, OB6, etc., you'll really get along with this workflow, and it really helps to break away from using screens and a lot of menu diving. Hopefully that goes to show you guys just how fast it is to program great sounding classic analog polysynth patches on the E7. If you do want to get a little bit deeper, it's got a great multitimbral mode, which is really easy to access and really fun to play around with. So here are a couple multitimbral patches I've made so you can get a sense of how it sounds. Finally, through most of this video, you've been hearing either the synth raw or through my Big Sky reverb for a little bit of space and ambience, but the E7 also comes equipped with some pretty solid effects. Namely, we've got a great sounding digital delay and a chorus, which is, in my opinion, not quite as strong as the delay, but it's still there if you're interested. So here's a couple patches with the chorus and the delay to hear how they sound. Alright, so for some final pros and cons, I've already talked at length about how great the synth sounds, and I've talked as well about some of the other things I like the workflow and the layout and the filters, etc. But I also want to give a special shout out to the build quality. E7 is really well built. It's hefty, there's no knob wiggle at all, and this really does feel like an investment that'll last a really long time and something I'd be comfortable taking on the road with me. I really love that it's a desktop module, which I feel like has allowed them at this price point to make a better quality instrument with more features because they've cut out the unnecessary cost of a keyboard. Secondly, I've mentioned it a bit already, but it bears repeating, this really is one of, if not the best value VCO analog polysynths on the market right now. So I did some comparisons for fun, and the only thing that falls even close to this price range is the Chord Prologue, which is essentially discontinued at this point and sounds completely different. The next thing up that you'd be comparing this to is something like the Prophet 6 or OB6, which are $3,500 instead of $1,500. So if you've been looking for that main bread and butter analog polysynth to add to your studio, this right now I think has to be my top choice. But like anything, the E7 is not perfect, so how about the cons? Well, firstly, there's no way to do any sort of FM or oscillator cross modulation on the E7, which is a bit of a shame. Although there are 3 LFOs and you're not going to run out of modulation anytime soon, I generally prefer doing cross modulation, at least subtly, versus using lots of different LFOs on my sound, and that would have been really nice to be able to do. Secondly, there's no distortion on the E7, which I know you can remedy this with a distortion pedal or a plugin, but I would have preferred them to replace the chorus with the distortion because that's an effect I like using a lot more. I realize this is personal taste though, but I just love analog distortions on polysynths. Finally, while I like the delay a lot in the effects, the chorus I'm not a fan of. Unfortunately, it really sucks the tone out of the E7, and I found that pretty much every patch I made sounded better with the chorus completely disabled. Referring back to point 2, I would have preferred if they replaced it with the distortion. But overall, my conclusion is that the E7 is absolutely amazing and definitely should be on your list for synths to check out, and I think it sounds pretty amazing. But that just about wraps up my video today on the E7. So what do you think? Am I right? Is this the most underrated polysynth on the market? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you next time.